Happy communities.
Nothing. It's been in and out. I mean, I've seen it, so it's just spice it up and.
You said that. Live.
Okay. So welcome, everyone. Today's November 5, West Salem Regional Advisory Board.
Marie. Dr. Fisher. Here. John Hammond.
Yes.
Jeremy McKay. Thomas Grocer. Here. Douglas Meltzer. Here. Samantha Russ. Greg Shine.
Here.
David Ryson. Here.
And approval of the agenda. And approval of the October 1 meeting.
So the first one was Tom Provision, Samantha seconded, and now it's exactly sure. That's like again. There you go. Tom Provision for second.
Public comment.
Okay, so this is an action item. So last month there was discussion around aligning the grant program to fit similar to downtown. For those that weren't here, and there's this toolbox program with other urban rural areas of downtown was the same way. It was a facade only, limited to 20,000, and it works for a downtown full of historic buildings that need facade improvements. It wasn't as good a fit. The only historic thing about the second, let's say, the Bowl City Hall. West Salem wants its own city before they merge. Didn't work out there with that program. Conversation around 2014 was to because there's so many repeat game grants that basically you have repairs done in the front of buildings. 5 years would pass, 2 years, 3 years, and then they come back to get more paint or something. So it was a shift away from that type of grant to encouraging bigger investment. So it shifted from 20,000 maximum to 300,000. And it's at that time, because the way the West Salem building stock is configured, had like a lot of changes with industrial buildings. Industrial buildings that were operating, true at the time, they were continuing to expand. So there was a piece of that, still is a piece tied to manufacturing, trade sector, fixed and permanent equipment, basically investments that would trigger assessment that would increase tax revenue for. We're giving money away basically with a grant program that's generated with a rental tax increment. The intent was to encourage building or property or equipment investments that would add additional tax revenue and pay it back. So with that, it was building expansion, new building construction. We have seen some activity, but then it's teetered off. I think we average probably 3 per year. And now we'll probably get toward like 1. There have been changes with Second Street. We're seeing building improvements done, but it's existing buildings, so it didn't trigger the building square footage. There have been talks with some of the buildings on Second Street that are single story, and eventually, once they're occupied, in and building above, then it would be grant eligible. So there's some missed opportunities in some of these transitional spaces, old industrial moving to other commercial retailer services, other buildings just having business occupants change. In North Gateway and downtown, we allow for, as long as there's a business expansion trigger. So in the case of downtown, if you're in an upper floor, maybe there used to be one existing suite that was a certain size and you have adjacent suites. What this encourages downtown is merging of multiple suites. So you could take 1 to 3 or 4, whatever, change walls, all in an effort to There's an existing tenant that only needed that space and they left and sat vacant for a little while. This new tenant was coming in, it's a bigger footprint. And so this grant accommodated it. So we wanted to see if there's a fit in West Salem to do similar. Obviously not up before, but there are changes. I've seen it with the record store now in Edgewater. So there's some things that a grant could be used to help move walls, change electrical, HVAC, permanent type improvements. So that was the discussion last month is around what those would look like. And so I'll go through the changes in the new packet. After the agenda minutes, you want to follow along. They're the program guidelines. And so the changes that are being recommended that take action from this group, since your advisory, I framed the wording in the agenda as a recommendation. So if you want to look at it and change it, it's up to you. I just like providing that as a guide, because I know being on that side of the public meeting, hard to be like, okay, motion to do X. So give you some language around that. So first, there's the first page is a memo summarizing what I've went over about some of the background for the grant program. So the current program, as I mentioned, new building construction, expansion, equipment is 20% matching grant. That's something that this group said we could be a little bit more flexible with. So some of the downtown, I'll get into it, there's a sliding scale investment. There's a 10-year maintenance of that investment. So obviously a building, that's not going to change. It's a permanent improvement. Where that is geared at is on the manufacturing side, trying to keep it at the location for as long as possible so you can recoup the investment. With equipment, it's depreciating. Some rental properties too. The equipment depreciates at a faster rate, so it's one of those things where it's like there's the 10-year and it's of equal or greater value. So it's something when we created it initially, we didn't want to hamstring. We had food processors and we had at the time we had a brewery. And usually when they're expanding and getting that equipment, they'll get like a used piece of equipment. It's expensive. And we didn't want to hamstring them, like, oh, you have to keep that there for 10 years. And if they do well, they see a better piece, a newer piece of equipment, they could replace it. You could apply for a new grant, replace the old, as long as it's a big group of people are creating around it. We're trying to be flexible with that. So that stays really gearing at the 10-year and 20% match. There's an exception too in this area. So for bigger developments, they have to meet 3 criteria. Adaptive reuse, again, with the changes that are happening with Salem, it's pretty easy. Greater investment, even when we had the development on Glen Creek, that was like $10 million. So it's not, again, that difficult. It's just something as an incentive to say, hey, this is really geared at a bigger project. And so it's $3 million. And then visual change specific to Main Street South. So this is again geared at Second Street, another kind of mixed use. And there's already design criteria, design standards. So it's just reinforcing that. So they're easy to achieve, but the main thing is geared at bigger projects, larger investment, requires agency approval. So in that case, if they meet those criteria, we would put together a staff report, take it to the urban renewal agency, they review it and authorize it. So we've done that before in downtown with multiple projects. In fact, on Liberty and Schmickada was the new city department. That's one that's got that received that additional grant. Rain Suite is one of those we're hoping in West Salem, if it ever gets to the point of developing. That's why we framed it, is to be in a position for industrial building change along Second Street or Rain Suite. So we're in a position to make one available. We just haven't seen that yet. Talked to the realtor probably 2 weeks ago, and it's just slow. They're marketing it, but nothing's serious enough to move forward. So in the memo, I added bullets as far as changes, and then we can go through the attachment detail. So reflecting on what was discussed last month, looking at opening it up to do building alterations for business retention, expansion, and relocation. So in this case, the incentive is to look at adding jobs. So where you have an existing tenant, this might be an area where we allow some grade. Because we don't want to necessarily punish like an existing business if they're there and they have building improvements. The incentive there, I guess, is to demonstrate they're going to add jobs, and there's not a criteria. It could be one job. Obviously, it'd be great to have more, but the intent, what we've seen in other areas, North Gateway and downtown, is usually you have business occupying a space, maybe they relocate. So in the case of like Chicha, for example, there in West Salem, they had issues with their building. They said they did have lead contamination that would help clean up at the time when they got established there. They were saying it was coming back to be a problem. So they relocated to Northeast Salem. And those scenarios, we have now a vacant building space. So now you have an opportunity with an incentive to say, okay, let's encourage a relocation or a business expansion or something to go in there with some money to help configure their space. I don't know what they were brewery before. Obviously, things like a commercial kitchen, those type of upgrades, we want to do what we can to encourage that to be retained because those are expensive. But if there's other things that need to be changed to fit the new business, that's what this is here to have. Do you have something?
Yeah, that's.
Okay.
Sorry, you said there's lead contamination.
Yeah, there was lead, and so at the time, so it was a clutch property at the time. And they were going through reworking it. They knew about the lead, and they were working. They had gotten to a point of production. I think that in their efforts to prepare the space more for Chicha, they found more lead contamination, so they had to stop work. Everyone was brought back in. State was brought in. Yeah, so yeah, they take it very seriously, and so Clutch stopped and they worked with the state and hired a consultant to remedy it. We had a grant with them to prepare the space for the for what would be Chicha's. And so we had to make adjustments on our end too, because when you have a project like that, say $2,000 grant, now all of a sudden you have this huge expense of environmental cleanup. So we had that already as an option in our grant. So it's just a matter of many of the grants include more to help offset because they had way more expense. We had like the additional 100,000 we put toward it, hundreds of thousands to make that. Yeah, so I think again they got to a point where the state said you're good to go for the type of service you're providing now. So it's safe, but I think I don't know what, I just know last year or so, and they just had a sign on the door saying closed for now, and so we even had like the city council at the time asked them to check. It was pretty popular.
Yeah.
And so I was tracking, I was reaching out, I didn't hear back from them. I saw that they posted it in Pittsburgh. Said it was okay, so. Yeah, I don't know.
Or is there still lead issues?
Yeah.
They said it was due to lead. I don't know if it was Clutch was the former owner, they sold it, so I don't know if it was like reworking the lease. That's what they said in their statement. But
Goes to just that industrial piece, I mean, literal terms, it's been on and off for 20 years, and we looked at it. West Salem mechanical or machinery, and the Canard / ATI, you know, we had. My girls played softball on that field, right? Because they donated, and then, oh my God, you can't be there because there's positive tests that were conducted, but they weren't always positive. They were kind of transient. It's, you know, it's a hard beast to get in front of when it's kind of perched and coming and going at high water table. those, it's a ghost that they probably are gonna take a while to really fully, flush. And so, you go out there and do a level one, end up with a positive 50% of the time, or negative, or 50% of the time. So it's a tough one to get in front of.
So the second bullet down below, under the proposed program changes in the memo, this is in line with what we discussed last month about a sliding scale that's similar to downtown. So it's a 20% fixed, typical within current program. What this allows is 50% matching grant up to 50,000. So it encourages smaller projects, and so with a $50,000 project, it'd be $25,000 grant. So it would hopefully be something to help with these spatial transitions between businesses. That's what we've seen here downtown. And then 30% match up to 150,000. And then you hit the 20% match with a project of 150,000 or more. The other change is instead of a 10-year maintenance, a 5-year maintenance and investment. Chicha had their equipment that we helped with. They literally hit the 10-year mark and moved northeast. That was really the only time we've had changes as far as relocation of what they had to a different space. So we haven't really been an issue, and downtown had the 5-year. So it's just something that, for like staff tracking purposes, it's a little bit easier. So those are the changes, and then the next page is getting to the specifics. So when you look at the grant guidelines, these were adopted by the agency in 2014. Well, I guess they were reworked in 2017 and amended 2019, and now this will probably go to 2026. So when you look at this, the changes are underlined. So under 5 and 6, these were already existing. I think we changed it in 2017 to allow for the cleanup. It's already in the urban renewal plan. It was just not something articulated in the guidelines. So that's, again, kind of we have to scramble to clarify that the grant can be used for the. So that's what. So when you see this, there's not date specific to the changes. When you see underline or strike throughs is what I got removed. Through that, so under section 2(6), let's see something in the public benefit. So in this case, this would be a new, where instead of public benefit only meaning like building expansion, rebuilding, construction, it could also be business retention, expansion, relocation, adds jobs. So again, the barrier there would be simply adding a job. It's not really a defined set of jobs. Again, just allowing some flexibility. Then sorry, right above that in 9, says the minimum rate $4. So that was just again that 20 to 25% maximum match. Took that out. Number 3, first one. So again, just removing that 20%. There's some documentation that's included in the West Salem grant that isn't in other areas. So we're taking that out just to be consistent. Title works and appraisal. It's the only one, and the thinking there was usually our grants are paired with the commercial ones, so they already have an appraisal. So I found it helpful to be able to reference that to see like if the urban renewal agency has specific questions, like more about this project, and say their estimated value is this, there are this many jobs, just give more information. But internally, staff found it. Personally, me, when I interacted with people, because they already had the appraisal tied to a commercial loan, they're just getting a copy of it. So it wasn't burdensome, I didn't feel, to the applicant. But internally, for consistency. It's not required in any other area, so it's like, why do we require that? So that's why that's on there. As removal to propose removal.
So how would you establish? Or are you just leaning into the owner to create their own justification?
Yeah, so they explain what, they're still in the application, rationale, they have to make the case. Why the grant, financially, what benefit they're providing, because there's the public benefit piece to it. So usually, when you do new construction, anytime, it's going to be adding value, so it's redundant, it's just extra work, more things for them to, or as like going through a list of things that they have to pull together and submit, it just adds more things, so it's just. We get it regardless, the way the grant disbursement works is it's tied to as reimbursement for its project progressing. So it's not like we give them money up front and hope that it builds, it's as it constructs. So there's just wasn't a need for it. All the projects that we funded have finished, all add value, so it just felt like just additional paperwork. That's one thing that I would like to have as simple as possible, is explaining to people, once they understand what they have to pull together as a complete packet for a submittal, it's fine, but that back and forth that happens, if I can minimize that to the extent possible. Better. It's clear on their side. I mean, if you've got someone who, either on the real estate side is familiar with it, or some kind of consultant or a business that's done it before, it's easy. But if it's someone new, I had a couple that are newer, it's just an exchange back and forth for months. Yeah, I've got all this, but I still need X. Anyway, so hopefully it'll help alleviate some of that burden. Under C, there's just some language cleanup. The way that it's framed is the director is the city manager or designee. In this case, the way it was framed, the agency, it's just, even though we're the ones as staff determine it is complete, you don't actually go to the regional agency. It's one of those kind of cleanups, like formality. It's technically if somewhere to ask, like, oh, the agency deemed it complete. I don't think they have enough. I don't need to go to them and say, like, so can you deem this complete so we can issue a grant clearly? So that's just that. So when you get to so section 3, item number 3, grant conditions. This is where it starts to provide the detail of the match. So small grant 50% match of eligible project costs greater than 10,000, not to exceed 50,000. So 10,000 there is, we don't really want to have grants that takes effort to on their part to pull it together and then ours to process it. We want to encourage things that are more than 1 to 5,000. Plus, as soon as you get past 10,000 mark, triggers assessed. You like to assess. So that's what I think from. And then, so that's a small grant, and then large grants broken up into 30%, 20% matches. Again, the maximum is 30,000, but there's the exception, but in this case, just the general program with the parameters. And then some of the other strike throughs under E, those were before, again, just at the time we were transitioning, when we first did this, we were transitioning from a smaller $20,000 grant to a 300,000 grant. So there were concerns. We wanted to make sure that projects were being completed. We didn't want to be in a position where we're funding blight. That would be problematic. Urban rules intended to remedy blight. So if we were like Independence, for example, where they have a building that started and it's just sitting there, that if referred to as the skeleton or whatever, we don't want to be like in that position. So some of this documentation and processing is tied to that concern, but I haven't experienced any of that, so that was taken out, I think. 2019. Towards the last page, so you'll see there, we, again, one of the concerns was having an amount of funds and having the program popular enough that like a single applicant can come in and basically use all the money. We can experience that, so we took that out, that you had to have a minimum of 5 years between, if you hit that 300,000 mark, you'd have to wait 5 years to apply for the program again. That was removed, I think, in 2019 as well, because it's just something we didn't experience. And if there's someone who had interest in funding to be able to make a lot of investment in West Salem, we want to encourage that. So,
5 years.
Huh?
5 years, yes, too.
so like in the case of Deacon or someone else, or Clutch now who's doing a lot of work on Second Street, they have multiple properties, so they saw a lot of opportunity and they wanted to change those buildings. And they could apply for multiple different like tax lot locations.
If you do simultaneously, that overlap.
Yeah, you could have like a one property at 300,000 and a whole other property you're developing or doing work on. We just haven't seen it. Yeah, I think it's gone out as far as those that have like Clutch or let's say machinery or other businesses will use it a lot. They know, but it's there. It's just you have to have a project. And
The resource,
meet all the requirements.
Well, it's like a resource capacity, if you're like trying to have finance multiple real estate projects. That's not like a simple way for one to make that happen.
Yeah, so it's there as an incentive. So it's like encouraging, like, okay, take us up on it. You have multiple investments, go for it. We just hasn't been something. And that's what we've done over the years is, where it makes sense. And in this case, it felt like it was a kind of maybe venue for further investment. So it was taken out. So if there are things that are maybe redundant or excessive, improved. So we'll continue to see these things as we go on over the years. The sliding scale works too well. We might look at adjusting it like that. I mean, we're seeing a lot of things. Maybe we're too smaller projects and too many of them or something. I don't know. I don't think that would be the case, but they're definitely bring it back to the group and discuss it. Make changes, recommendations. The agency have to make changes. So that's what's happening. So hopefully it reflects what we talked about last month. You guys have any questions?
Well, I mean, I kind of think so, but it was simple point for that. It's 50 grand.
I will say,
Should those maybe be like 100, 250, 500, break them up into. A little bit more representative. I mean, if you plan, I don't know. Simple sign, you're talking 50 to 100.
Just for a sign.
Yeah, that's
Outrageous.
yes, I will say, I do the grants in all the areas. So we do a lot of small grants in Riverfront. That's where that makes comes from. I'd say, and it's probably different. West Salem, but I think again, this is more care to just rearranging their spaces. I would say moving walls from around, doing some electrical very easily. Yeah, within that 3,000, but if you want to change it to more, change.
Discussion. It's just my instinct says you get your touchdown. In today's world.
I know we did move solid walls, which adds to them as a major funding that we had to do. It was just about 40 for that.
Our little space. Just updated kitchen and bathrooms and ADA. And we were 40 to 60. Pretty rapidly. And you can throw a sign up for about 15 small business like us. But You know, if you're actually doing something. Like that. I don't know.
Ours are like 35.
Hundred walkway on the front on Edgewise. It's gonna be a $100,000 project.
You can still get those, like if it does go beyond 50,000, you just move from the 50% match to 30. So, but we can, that's something that we change, if you wanna have it as. The sliding scale started at 100,000, and so what would the second part be? So then you'd be. It goes like in increments of 100, so you got 100,000, 200,000, 100 plus.
It gives you a lot more time to do. Like to see people use.
Yeah.
Water. Has some needs. And not just that water, but.
The group feels similar.
Yeah,
I'm sure.
I think we're, yeah.
So the way I frame the motion is just as presented, so what you could do is, we get to the recommendation, you could say, as presented. And then there's something like that, some think general, how to get specific, to make sure that the detail reflects. So I'll make note and I'll make sure that the guideline changes reflect what we talked about. But as far as like that motion. Amended to change to the 100,000.
Okay.
So you're the one administering this, is this what you like to administer?
I think it's good. I would like to see more, the fact that the grants have cheated off. Where we're lucky to get like 1 a year over the last couple. Last to jump, so yeah, that's a good idea.
It's my one useful thing today. I'm done.
Oh,
no.
Thank you.
Curl up with the dog.
I did take today.
And if it becomes so popular, we're doing those small little improvements, we'll come back and say. Adjustment, but again, I don't see what's the problem with that. You're encouraging space utilization that. Essentially what we're doing is trying to avoid blighted conditions of like vacancy, and so the more. Help encourage. Space. Utilization. Else.
No application.
Zero.
So that.
If there's anything else, I mean, it's worth looking at and see if there's anything else that should be removed. Patient center. Some of the program plans, and that's really. So as far as demonstrated ownership, so in this, we have title that really we get, kind of. LLCs a lot of times, and so they're just their organization of information. It's really just tying the applicant, authorized people, the person who's signing. Both the application and then they're tied legally to the property. That's what that is secured at, so. It's not automatic, we do that everywhere.
I know it might be. Heavy. But. You require architectural schematic. Could that just simply be a small A instead of a capital A?
Yeah, change it to be.
So the
Plan
plan
or-
designer,
Yeah,
I mean, we don't really give a damn about a license for.
I think it's where the sufficient detail, again, we're just trying to see what your project is. They came in with a hand sketch. We're trying to get that.
I'm just speaking to the fact that if you
Yeah.
walked in and. What,
Yeah,
and architect stamp on
No,
the drawing, you're gonna end up with a 10 to 15 bill.
Well,
Yeah.
that works into that 50,000.
Yeah.
Quickly.
Yeah, no, that's not, it's just to clarify what we're looking for, so I guess we could change it to plans or elevations, something to show like what's your tangible plan. It's definitely not been an issue. So the grant that we have now, it's on 9th Street and it's converting a building to a cafe and like a beanery roastery. So they have manufacturing equipment and they're reworking the space. So in that case, it was a hand problem, it wasn't anything as far as like hiring an architect or engineer. What's that?
Was that hand job?
Yeah, it was just like basically showing like their floor plan, this is where we're planning to put the roasting equipment in. Those things.
If you're doing this sign, you're gonna have to follow under planning.
Yeah.
Requirements regardless. Those pretty owners already. So they're pretty deliberate. And I think they probably end up overlapping all things considered. And improvement. If it's external, internal, with for equipment set.
So. My recommendation, if you want to do that, if everyone's good with it, just get back to the. In the move forward. Modified this. Okay, so we have a motion by Doug and then second by David. Discussion.
So, vote to
Yeah,
approve.
well, you guys have to call for a vote. All those in favor.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Yeah. Those two. Motion approved.
Good.
Spend nothing, Jay. Upset.
Yeah. Our thoughts last week was we wanted our last month. We wanted the guys and input on it, so. Captured. You know, what is gonna incentivize. Getting something done. It seemed like a jolly process.
That was our two thumbs up for.
Yeah.
So for other discussions, we have got.
Yeah, Ashley, so although I was not in attendance, I was out of state, I had my personal banker attend. Chief Womack was the guest speaker, he always he's just a good human, really is trying to do good things. This is what his take is, Chief Womack went over the crime statistics from the past 3 years in West Salem. Showing a decline in crime in the area while also giving insight into new security programs that they are implementing. The new security features include the downtown bike patrol and the division of the department that are specifically focused on providing support to the homeless individuals. So that's the team, if you will, I believe it's 2-3 people. And there was private funding that was approved. So 2+1. So, for example, there's a situation, West Salem, where there is a ill situation. Instead of police showing up and putting a Band-Aid on it or not, having those 2+1 show up and provide that individual help resources. So it's a good thing. Trying to switch it one at a time. When I thought about the 2+1, I was why not have 5 groups, right? They can only do so much for budgeting, so they're working on what they have, which is cool. And then he gave a look on how the department was previously lacking in funding and manpower, but is rebounding and hiring more officers to keep everything. So a little change there. And I'll just roll into the events that are coming up this Thursday. There's a greeters at Waukon Bank at 8:00 a.m. So whoever, I'm sure everyone's gotten an email. Perfect. So if you guys could attend, that would be great to support. And then on the 20th of November, across the street at Ross, we've got Western Christian singing or playing instruments, and then also Maddie speaking on what's going on with the baseball team. If you guys are familiar with those guys, originally we're going to be out at the Willamette college area, and that switched to Schmidt. So they're doing things out there and expanding, and they had a really good season last year. So they're upping the ante and really pouring some funds into that neck of the woods as well. And they've got 2 bears. This is completely off the subject. Sorry, public, but they've got or what do you call it? A brown bear, and then what's the other one? The mascot. There's 2 different mascots. I'll think of it in a second, but it's hilarious. Dingleberry.
Oh, the name of it.
They've got a brown bear and then a dingleberry. And the dingleberry is more for the, edgy adult side, where the brown bear is more for kids. So yeah, that'll be fun, and they're really getting out there. I met with the owner. I believe his name is Luigi. Really nice guy. So that's all I have.
Let's see, neighborhood.
Exciting.
Tuesday. 30. Or the Ross. Stairs at Ross. As far as their agenda. Special guest speakers, library discussion, neighborhood goals. Committee updates on houselessness, transportation. When it gives some creeks. Parks and lanes. As far as next meeting, we'll start budget discussions. So typically what we do, we'll start with the budget memo breakdown and talk about some of what you guys did last month for the guidelines, give feedback on how you think it should be framed as a recommendation. Usually, and with January 1st happening pretty close to what would be the first meeting in January, that means usually canceled. So we'll go from starting the budget in December to going back up in February. Well, typically you guys do your recommendation in February, so everything's situated by March. That's typically when all the boards and commissions are doing, like finalizing their recommendation and the budget committee picks up. So we'll get to that. I think with what you shared, with the West Salem Business Association, there have been some efforts downtown. You probably heard about it. I'll pull some of that information and share it with you next month. It's tied to, again, safety, security measures for downtown. I think that's somewhat fed. And don't neglect West Salem in your efforts to make downtown safe. It's really close, and some of that population made the park. And there was a situation, these hardware thing, I think this last week. Other things happen in that area too. So there have been efforts on the city and private side to help get additional resources, security better.
Okay.
Yeah, and cleanliness. Yeah, so I'll speak to that. You probably already know about it, so it'll probably be old news, but at least be more formalized in the next meeting. since we did it, at the last Riverfront downtown, the downtown advisory board meeting. Provided the parking report too, so we're gonna have big parking, so sure, how that works. What we've experienced so far going forward.
Can I ask a question on the parking? I was actually at a local restaurant, Spicy Bite. Indian food. If you guys haven't tried it, it's really good. But as I was walking down downtown, there's still a lot of little restaurants that have 3 or 4 different parking spots out on the street. And that was I'm just surprised that that's.
So they like have their sign there or something?
No, they've got like their outside dining that's taken 3 or 4 different parking
Oh, yeah.
spots. And that was a COVID thing, if I'm not mistaken, there was some permitting. If I'm not mistaken, I'm just curious, like, I guess why haven't they, this parking is such an issue, right? You know anything about that?
So I think they're going to allow, if you'll see, like, if you were to go out our building, we have, the eating platform that is typically in front of the welfare. So we did the work here as streets, that's maybe not data, like what's happening downtown in general. So we, every year do new phases of streetscaping, we just did. Rudy's, Schmeck it on one side, we still have to do the other side where Jason Penn's is. Right now, we're working on right up there, that's why that's relocated. So they're allowed still, it was a product of COVID, but it was just businesses that made the investment, it's a conversation, it definitely takes up parking. I'm not sure what's to come, there have been a lot of different conversations as far as like paying for those parking spaces to change them. I don't know what the next step is as far as, I know it's permitted now, I don't know what's. Cause there's definitely equitable. How that works as far as. Bigger businesses. That fronted that cost, they take up that space. And there's not a pathway for small businesses to do the same. Problem. So I know there have been some discussion, I don't know what the next step is, aside from allowing it to continue for now. The next step. I mean, it's permitted, so I mean, there's a process that they have to take to do it. But I don't know how to change.
What are they doing right there in front of Wildfire?
So it's just a lot of the old trees, old sidewalks, they're just not the city standard, so old outs, so it's just a matter of getting it situated and make sure the utilities, so I know a lot of lights didn't have like water and electric plugins, and then we had a lot of vaults too around there that are insecure, so we're going through and closing those out. Cooks and
You know, with the recalls, the was 4 feet. And so they're unfilled volumes.
Like
You got road traffic.
heading structurally problematic.
Could be, never have been.
Yeah, haven't been.
Thank God, but somebody put a semi on top of the sidewalk on one of the old vaults. That existed, what, probably 50% downtown buildings. They're vulnerable. Eliminating almost all of them.
Yeah.
The vast majority, but it's taken 5 years, 3 to 5 years.
Yeah, it's going to be going.
Long time.
We do new straight faces every year. I don't know, but I'll have to look to see what the timeline is to actually put on them. Expensive, it's like 14 years. 3 ones.
That'd be cool to like schedule tours. Say, there's something out there.
There is something out there.
Like underneath Bush US right there. There's still like the old vault underneath downstairs. And then there's still the railroad track. You can visit and see it. Nice, and then it leads to a concrete again. I said,
Yeah, there's still, that piece that's directly across from Phoenix and Grand, whatever hotel has falls that they haven't gotten. So, you know, there's a good way out of it.
I'll tell you a little history story about downtown.
I heard that we have small advertising budget, or is it just like general for this many? I think where I'm going with that is I know that the West Siders back publication. You know, if something like our ocean does pass, is it something that would be of interest to us to advertise that? You know, like I said, we're not getting, you said you get maybe one out in a year.
That's fair.
It is, would it behoove in the West Salem community to put something in the West Sider saying, hey, just so you know, city council passed this and you could get a beneficiary for that. It's a very good.
West Side Street.
I understand our on and off again bridge is nebulous.
So we're talking the retrofit, that's happening. And that's nebulous now? I'm pretty sure that's moving forward. I sent you the latest.
And at least the newspaper's version of that is that it's up again in Provo.
Internally,
And they're authorized the first chunk of phase one, but not phase two, should be the extension. Completion, extension, so not what the hell phase one means, and during the phase two.
It was 3 phases total. Which
I don't know.
we talked
I'd
about,
have to go back, I don't know what all the details of the phases are.
which you even talked about it, it was 3, so the first was just
As the bridge thing itself.
it was just the coming in, or the going in part, right? The first part. Coming off of the,
It was
Downtown.
hardening the bridge itself.
like Gilbert, whatever, underneath Gilbert, above Gilbert House, it's just that section. And then the second part was like the middle, and then the third was the other side. But she did mention that the second was not, nothing else was
Speaking of
funded yet.
the West Side paper, you guys, I sent out emails and helping Matthew. If you want to advertise, or you know someone that would like to advertise, this would really bring me back out to, let me know. Send it my way. Specials, articles, whatever. I'm doing one, once a month, I'm interviewing an owner or someone in the West Salem, the area. So it could be the next lucky one. Can I tell your story? But essentially I go in and ask questions and send it to the editor, and she draws up this with a nice picture of the hotel. So if you're interested, send it my way. Goes out to thousands of people. So,
So, you know, the 3,500. That's what they're printing.
Like printing circulation, 3,500, do they have digital? Yes.
Especially. The topic, so. That's it. Sure. Thank you.
Yeah.
oh yeah.